Built as an early pioneer of post-war aviation, the Convair CV240 family of airliners was the first civilian outing for an aircraft builder that was more focused on the development of military aircraft, creating a machine that was many steps beyond the standards set by the preceding Douglas DC-3, but would also be notable for its slew of serious accidents. The Convair company was formed through the urgent wartime merger of Consolidated Aircraft and Vultee Aircraft, two of America's most prominent manufacturers, the result of which was initially known as Consolidated Vultee during 1943, Consolidated being responsible for an impressive array of military aircraft, with one of its most notable being the PBY Catalina flying boat, which still holds the record for longest non-stop commercial flights, better known as the Qantas Double Sunrise Trans-Indian Ocean Service, between Ceylon and Australia during the Second World War. Consolidated also produced the B-24 Liberator four-engine bomber, a stalwart of the Allied bombardment of Nazi Germany, Fascist Italy, and Imperial Japan, which also had the distinction of being the most prolific in terms of aircraft production numbers in U.S. military history, with over 18,000 examples built. After the Consolidated Vultee union, later retitled to Convair, the company would go on to produce a number of outstanding military airplanes during the Cold War period, perhaps its most impressive being the B-36 Peacemaker strategic bomber, as powered by 6 piston radial engines in rear-facing pusher configuration and supported by 4 turbojet power plants, while other noteworthy military products of Convair during the Cold War included the F-102 Delta Dagger and F-106 Delta Dart fighters, as well as the futuristic Delta Wing B-58 Hustler supersonic bomber and Atlas rockets. During World War II, however, the Convair company was solely fixed on developing and delivering military fighters and bombers for the war effort, with the advance of civil aviation being essentially put on hold, with the most successful passenger model available at the time of America's entry into the war during 1941 being the Douglas DC-3, which had been introduced in 1936. While the DC-3 was a marvel of engineering, the reality was that its design, by the time of the war's end in 1945, was comparatively primitive and illustrated many limitations, its most significant drawback being its tail wheel configuration, which restricted its potential growth or improvement, as well as its lack of pressurization, which curbed its ability to fly above poor weather. At the same time, the development of military transport aircraft to succeed the DC-3's military equivalent, the C-47 Dakota, formed the basis of future passenger airlines going into the post-war era through simple conversions in the design to civilian usage, the Douglas DC-6 and Lockheed Constellation being perhaps the most notable examples, which were initially developed as pressurized transports but evolved into dedicated airliners. However, while the Constellation and the DC-6 battled each other for domination of the prestigious international market following the end of the war, the DC-3 continued to be the mainstay of regional unpressurized operations across the globe, but, as mentioned, illustrated limited potential for improvements to a design now 13 years old when considering its predecessor DC-1 and DC-2. Thus, in 1945, as demand for air travel rose exponentially, American Airlines set out a requirement for a new model that would replace its extensive fleet of DC-3s, with Convair stepping up to the challenge by way of the unpressurized Model 110, a twin-engined low-wing monoplane of all-metal construction that featured 30 seats. This model would be powered by Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp radial engines and would feature a tricycle landing gear and a ventral air stair for passenger boarding. The prototype, November X-ray 90653, undertaking its maiden flight on July 8, 1946. However, by the time the prototype Model 110 had taken to the skies, American Airlines, seeing the rapid development of airliner technology in the period immediately following World War II, had updated its specification requirements to have pressurization be provided as a minimum, while at the same time deeming the Convair Model 110 to be too small for the boom in post-war demand. Therefore, the Model 110 prototype was repurposed for use as a test mule to develop an enlarged and pressurized version of the same general design, dubbed the Model 240, with this machine being used to test various elements of the 240's underpinnings before ultimately being scrapped in 1947, once the new airliner had undertaken its maiden flight. The Convair CV240 would adopt a thinner but longer fuselage than the Model 110, with its innovation being centered around the adoption of a pressurized cabin in order to improve passenger comfort, as it allowed the aircraft to fly at higher altitudes, reducing the effects of weather and turbulence, while the tricycle landing gear gave a far greater flexibility than the earlier DC-3. The prototype CV240, November 240 Bravo November, undertook its maiden flight on March 16, 1947, the aircraft, now able to accommodate 40 passengers, being far more successful in wooing potential buyers, including American Airlines, who took on 75 examples once production had started, with the first deliveries taking place from February 29, 1948, while 50 units each went to Western Airlines, Continental Airlines, Pan Am, Lufthansa, KLM, Swissair, Sabena, and Trans-Australia Airlines. Following the initial superb commercial performance of the CV240, Convair began work on the creation of an enlarged variant dubbed the Super 240, but later the CV340, following requests from United Airlines and KLM, this new model being lengthened to hold an additional 4 seats, while the wingspan was extended for better performance at higher altitudes, the CV340 entering service with United to replace their DC-3s from 1951, with 52 units eventually ending up on their books. However, as the CV340 entered service, the technology behind propeller-driven airliners was taken a step further by the arrival of the Vickers Viscount Turboprop, which proved to be a major success and would even find a home within the ranks of the highly insular American market. Turboprops quickly illustrating their improvements in speed, comfort, reliability, and noise when compared to piston-powered models like the Convairliners. Therefore, due to their limited investment in turboprop technology, Convair opted to instead take the CV340 and improve it by way of soundproofing, an optional weather radar, and the potential to increase capacity from 44 to 52 passengers through the exchange of the carry-on luggage area for 2 more rows of seats, thus creating the Convair CB440 Metropolitan of 1954, with airlines including Swissair, Lufthansa, SAS, and Finnair taking on the type. Turboprop technology would arrive during 1955, when multiple CV340s were fitted with 2 Napier-Elland turboprop engines in place of the piston units, with 6 aircraft being converted by Napier for Allegheny Airlines at a cost of £160,000 per aircraft, while 12 new-build units, as constructed under license by Canadair at their Montreal factory, were delivered during 1960 with Napier engines at a cost of £436,000 per aircraft to the Royal Canadian Air Force. With Napier having proven that the Convairliners could be successfully converted to turboprop power, upgrades were made available for the Convair CV340 and CV440, with the former being dubbed the Allison Propjet Convair 340 and the latter the CV580. These aircraft being fitted with 2 Allison 501 D13DH turboprop engines with 4-blade propellers, an enlarged vertical fin, and modified horizontal stabilizers. These conversions were performed by Pacific Air Motive on behalf of the Allison Engine Company at a cost of £175,000 per aircraft, with the work taking approximately 60 days to complete. The CV580 serving with the original Frontier Airlines, Allegheny Airlines, and North Central Airlines, as well as for American Eagle on behalf of American Airlines in code-sharing feeder service. Other turboprop conversions included the employment of Rolls-Royce Dart engines with 4-blade propellers as per the Vickers Viscount, with CV600 conversions being performed in-house by Convair, the first CV600 taking to the skies on November 30, 1965, and would serve with Trans-Texas Airways and Air Metro Airways. Beyond civilian variants, the Convairliner family also lent its design to military uses as well, including the C-131 Samaritan, which was used by the United States Air Force for medical evacuation and VIP transport, the T-29, a trainer model of the C-131 used to instruct navigators and radio operators, the R-4Y Samaritan, as used by the United States Navy, and the Canadair CC-109 Cosmopolitan, as converted by Napier-Elland for the Royal Canadian Air Force. The latest iteration of this rugged and long-lasting family of Convairliners is the CV5800, produced by Kelowna Flightcraft in the picturesque Okanagan Valley of British Columbia, Canada, where C-131F airframes have been modified to include a stretched fuselage, a new freight door, digital avionics, and Allison 501D22G engines, the 5800s being currently operated by KF on scheduled cargo flights out of Vancouver. In total, 1,086 Convairliners would be built between 1947 and 1954, of which nearly every major airline in the world would operate at least one unit throughout the 1950s and into the 1960s, one notable user of the type being John F. Kennedy, who employed a CV-240 named Caroline in honor of his daughter during his successful presidential campaign. Through the decades, the Convairliners would acquire a reputation for reliability and profitability thanks to their capacity for carrying a significant payload, with most airlines in America operating the type, including Pan Am, Alaska Airlines, Braniff, Continental, Delta, American, Eastern, and United. In Europe, Lufthansa, KLM, Swissair, LOT, SAS, and Sabena were among its many customers, while Trans-Australia Airlines, or TAA, was an early user in Oceania, acquiring the CV-240 in late 1948, and thus making it the first pressurized aircraft in regular use across Australia, with the Royal Australian Air Force also operating a pair of CV-440 Metropolitans for many years. Other smaller airlines in Australia and neighbouring countries in the Oceania region also used the type, including Fiji Airways and the Auckland-based Air Chathams, which served the eponymous islands comprising a New Zealand territory in the Pacific Ocean, and still uses 3 Convair 580s for freight and charter services. Latin American airlines were particularly fond of the aircraft, with many examples operated by them well into the new millennium, more than 20 airlines in the region acquiring and operating Convairs, including Varig, Aeromexico, LAN Chile, and Aerolíneas Argentinas. In military circles, the 512 C-131 Samaritans would be worked by the United States Air Force, Navy, and Coast Guard, as well as NASA, the CV-240 being used in medevac and VIP roles, while one famous example was repurposed for use in zero-gravity training and study, being affectionately dubbed the original Vomit Comet. Pelitors, the civilian arm of the Sri Lankan Air Force, also acquired a CV-440 Metropolitan to provide scheduled services to the Maldive Islands in the 1970s, presenting the first ever regular air link to what was then an isolated archipelago in the Indian Ocean, while Air Maldives, the first national airline of the country, also operated 2 CV-440 Metropolitans named Flying Fish 1 and Flying Fish 2. As for the 13 Canadair CC-109 Cosmopolitans, these would be employed by No. 412 Squadron at CFB Ottawa of the Royal Canadian Air Force, the last examples of which were retired in 1994 when they were replaced by de Havilland Dash 8s and Challenger jets. However, more notable than its commercial success would be its later reputation for attrition, as the Convairliners have been involved in 87 accidents, resulting in the deaths of 1,055 people, the first of which took place on January 22, 1952, when American Airlines Flight 6780 crashed on approach to Newark Airport during foggy conditions, killing all 23 aboard and 7 people on the ground, this accident being one of 3 fatal crashes in the Newark area within the space of a year. The worst incident involving the CV-240 was on October 14, 1953, when Sabena CV-240-12, Oscar Alpha Whiskey Quebec, crashed near Kelsterbach in West Germany due to a loss of power caused by heavy deposits of lead on the spark plugs that cut the engines, killing all 44 aboard. On December 17, 1960, Convair C-131D Samaritan, 55-0291, operated by the United States Air Force, struck the spire of St. Paul's Church in central Munich following an engine failure caused by fuel contamination shortly after takeoff, leading to the aircraft crashing into a crowded tram and sparking an inferno that led to the deaths of all 20 aboard, plus a further 32 on the ground. On October 27, 1975, the worst incident involving the Convair CV-440 took place, when Transporte Aéreo Militar CV-440-12, Tango Alpha Mike 44, crashed into the Cerro Colorado Mountains after failing to gain height due to overloading, killing all 67 aboard. On October 20, 1977, Convair CV-240, November 55 Victor Mike, crashed into a wooded area near Gillsburg, Mississippi due to fuel starvation while carrying the rock band Lynyrd Skynyrd, resulting in the deaths of lead vocalist and founding member Ronnie Van Sant, guitarist and vocalist Steve Gaines, backing vocalist Cassie Gaines, assistant road manager Dean Kilpatrick, Captain Walter McCreary, and First Officer William John Gray, while 20 others survived with severe injuries, and the band Lynyrd Skynyrd in its original incarnation would be broken up. On September 8, 1989, the worst incident involving the CV-580 occurred when Partner Flight 394, operated by CV-580, Lima November Papa Alpha Alpha, crashed into the sea near Hirtshals, Denmark, after the tail fin suffered severe vibration due to it being attached to the fuselage with fraudulent bolts, the vibration causing a rudder hardover that killed all 55 occupants and sparked a worldwide investigation into the provision of bogus or faulty spare parts on the black market. The latest accident involving any of the Convairliner family took place on September 11, 2019, when Barker Aeromotive CV-440, November 24 Delta Romeo, crashed at Bubba's Diesel and Auto Repair in Monclova, Ohio, near the Toledo Express Airport, killing both pilots, the cause being attributed to pilot error as a result of fatigue among the two crew that led to the aircraft stalling and striking trees. Regardless of its later reputation for accidents, though, the Convairliner family proved to be the last successful design by the Convair company, with their following foray into the field of civil jetliners in the form of the Convair 880 and 990 Coronado being short-lived and unprofitable, though the wider company continued to prosper as a subcontractor and manufacturer of aircraft components for other aerospace entities. The Atlas rocket program proved to be a profitable niche too, expanding into the satellite launching business after the General Dynamics Corporation absorbed Convair into its conglomerate during 1953, with the missile and rocket manufacturing operation being sold to the Hughes Aircraft Company in 1992 and the residual aircraft division to Lockheed, with Convair ceasing to exist as a division of General Dynamics in 1996. In the end, the Convairliner family of the CV-240, 340, 440, and 540, as well as its many military variants, proved to be an early example of reliable passenger aircraft during the infancy of the modern civil aviation industry, presenting a sturdy and practical fuselage that was exceptionally flexible and could be modified for all manner of power plants or uses, thus ensuring the continued employment of many examples nearly 80 years after their launch.